Hi, welcome everybody. Thanks for tuning in to this latest Rootwurks webinar, Recall Mania, the truth behind the headlines. My name is Ben Hartman. I'm the content manager here at Rootwurks, and I'll be your host for this webinar today. So if you've been paying attention to news in the food industry this past year, there's been a lot of headlines about food safety recalls, cases of contamination, including some that involve some really big household names in the industry. In these cases, they cost companies a ton of money, and in some people are also unfortunately getting hurt. And so it's made a lot of big headlines, and it's also drawing some consumers to question somewhat the safety of the food they consume, and also the people who are responsible for protecting, for ensuring the safety of those foods. So in this webinar, we're going to take a look behind those headlines and figure out what's going on, and also what companies like yours can do to reduce the chances that they'll be featured in one of those headlines and have to carry out a recall. So to help make sense of it here, we got an expert with us today, Andrea Griffiths. She's the Retail and Supplier Audit Program Manager for ASI. She's got 15 years of food safety experience, including 10 years in a management and FQSA role. Has several professional and developmental certificates, including PCQI, HACCP, and SQF Lead Auditor. And we're very happy to have her here with us today. Hi, Andrea. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Ben. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Of course, we're happy to have you. So I guess just, give us a quick look here. Is it, has there actually been a big increase in the number of these recalls, or is it more just we're hearing more about it? Maybe both.
Well, we're definitely hearing a lot more about food safety recalls. Cognitive distortion, the media has been a thing since we've had media, right? We did just have an election. I'm not going on either side politically. I'm just saying that depending on who's putting out these, I'm so sorry, my cat's running around.
Things are not always objective, basically.
Correct. Yeah. Things aren't always objective. We're going to hear there's a lot larger companies, as you mentioned before, brands, and those are going to go out first. We have recalls all the time for packaging, as we talked about before, for labeling that, people go by every day and people don't hear about it. So, there's a big media hype on it behind it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
As well as I don't want to take away from the severity of what we actually have. One life lost is too much. We're trying to mitigate foodborne illness. There's people behind the scenes every day trying to work towards it. So I don't want to take away from that severity. Seriously.
No, absolutely. Yeah. But it also makes perfect sense that if you have, a recall affecting a brand that everybody in America knows and, has in their own refrigerator, it's going to make a wave and people are going to talk about it. And then if you're even a news outlet that doesn't typically cover the industry, you're going to want to get in there because it's something that, everybody knows. It's a household.
They're talking about, right? And we just had Thanksgiving, right? Mm-hmm. So they're going to put that out. People want to be concerned about different things, their food. And...
Yeah, no shortage of things can go wrong at Thanksgiving, and at least, even without recalls. But yeah, it definitely makes sense with considering some of the names and some of the stories, and also the fact that people have actually gotten hurt. So is it also, when we spoke about it, you mentioned there's been some changes also in the food people eat in recent years, like, more fresh ingredients, maybe things with more complex supply chains.
Absolutely, yeah. That's made it a little more difficult for the FDA to even go in and there's so many different components. We're importing fresh items, right? There's a lot behind trying to keep that safe, trying to keep temperatures good. Consumer preference changing. Look at pasteurized milk. We've got Campylacter has been a thing because we're not pasteurizing, and that is kind of shown to be an issue, and not to place any of the blame on the consumers. But as technology advances, as we learn more stuff, we absolutely have to keep up with consumer demands, but that changes the food safety portion of it.
Yeah, it makes more sense. People want more access to more complex and fresh ingredients that are coming from more places. It just seems, it makes perfect sense that it'd be harder to have more oversight in more places than you had before. And I imagine that's what we're seeing. I guess from a regulatory standpoint, is it that maybe there's more regulations? I know with allergens, they're checking, the list has gotten longer, the list has changed. Is it just maybe they're checking for more things?
Sneaky sesame. So sesame was added, of course, to the list, and that's been a thing. A lot of people are forgetting to add their sesame. We have a lot of, missing, and we want to be serious about allergens. You and I had kind of spoken a little bit earlier about the butter recall that we recently had. Wasn't necessarily that there's something in the butter, but we were missing a component of it, which was we didn't add the milk to it. Now, somebody that has a severe milk allergy, it could be potentially fatal and harm them, right? So,
yeah. And I guess it's one of the sort of things too, where like you just want to err on the side of caution, even if you think, well, obviously butter has dairy in it, but at the same time, it's just, it's like if there's any doubt, there's no doubt. Just
right. Yeah. If there's any doubt, that's throw it out.
Just make sure to put it on there, and just don't think that don't assume that people are all going to know, I guess is the bottom line. And are people also or companies, I guess, or like, let's say regulators, are they just better at finding things? Their detection methods, I imagine, have gotten more sophisticated as the years have gone by. The ability to spot things.
Yeah, genome sequencing has brought a lot of. We're able to pull things back before people get sick. So that's another thing that I really like to mention when it comes to recalls. Because we hear recall doesn't necessarily mean that we had a foodborne illness, that somebody got sick. It's a proactive measure to make sure that people don't get sick, because that's in all of our food safety. We want to be proactive. We don't want to be reactive. Reactive is not good when it comes to any kind of health or food safety, period.
But it's also better for companies. I mean, you don't want to have to. It's much better to be, preventing a recall than responding to one. Obviously, or picking one up. I think when we spoke about a week or so, you also mentioned that it's possible that the pandemic had a role, and also recent government shutdowns. Like they're just kind of the people who were in charge of doing these site checks and all that. They're what they do in the day and day kind of changed dramatically. Was that the situation?
Yeah. So absolutely. If you remember 2019, we had a recall that substantially cut down FDA inspections, right? That one was a huge hit. The one that we had last year, I'll be honest, through everything that I've read through, we didn't have a huge hit in deductions. However, COVID absolutely did that. It shut down the world pretty much, right, for a little while. On the positive side of that, even though there was a lot of negative, on the positive side of that is I think that a lot of companies, from manufacturing all the way to retail, your restaurants, your grocery, have actually implemented really good GMPs, washing, making sure we don't have people coming in sick. We have that portion. I'm so sorry. I think you can hear me, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We have, yeah. Now on the opposite side of that, we have, there were certain companies, without saying any names, that actually got cited, or they got in trouble for incentivizing employees to show up sick, adding extra to their checks, right. So yeah, the pandemic absolutely hit us hard on all parameters of that. Also how we get our food, the supply chain itself, because if we have major companies that here are shutting down, we're going to have to get our food from somewhere, right? So that adds more dynamics, more routes through the supply chain.
And so were they kind of more remote auditing? How would a remote audit catch things?
Yeah, there was remote auditing for the GFSI. So that still remained. Your SQF, your BRC. There's a lot more remote audits. Now, remote audits are we can look at documentation, but as you can imagine, it's nothing like a snapshot in time. When we go into a facility, we see what's going on right there. It's real easy to, not saying that people do this, but we're all human, turn this way, clean that up, or let's do this, or hey, we don't have that document, let's get the document going. So
I think when you talk about the pandemic, I mean, it wasn't all that long ago, but there were definitely so many things that just changed, definitely in the short term. But I imagine a lot of them have somewhat still remained, just in terms of, awareness about hand washing, or just outside of the workplace. I don't think everybody's gone back to, blowing out the candles on the birthday cake, for instance,
completely. Yeah. Brought a little bit of awareness. Yeah.
Yeah. And I could picture just, culturally and just having that sort of awareness, would make things safer, but it also, there can be those drawbacks as well in terms of oversight and just, remote audits. So, and I think you also mentioned there was also, because I think people would tend to maybe blame the shutdowns with the pandemic, but wasn't there? You also mentioned government shutdowns, and regulators not being able to do their jobs. That's also something that we saw.
Absolutely. So when we have government shutdowns, whether full or partial, they have to go into their addendums, and that is absolutely going to affect how many inspections are going to be able to be conducted. And we're already short. We already have a shortage of how many FDA resources with how much technology is going up and how many places we have to go audit, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so we established, there are a lot of big headlines. There are a lot of recalls. There's been, a number of reasons why that's been going on. But in terms of companies and anybody listening today, let's talk about a little bit what they could do to kind of to mitigate some of these risks and take a more proactive as opposed to a reactive approach. And I think one of the things you really emphasized in the previous conversation was food safety culture and having that be part of just everything you do. So what is, I guess for anybody who's a little bit maybe less versed in that, how would you describe what that looks like?
So food safety culture is paramount, I believe, right next to training. It's integrated in your systems. It starts from senior management down, and food safety culture would look something like, what do we do when nobody's looking? So we have ultimately food safety is up to the sites that we can go in and we can check it, we can audit, we can inspect. However, we don't ever wait for inspections or audits to make sure that we're following compliance or doing what we're supposed to do. Now, food safety culture, a good food safety culture program, it's kind of hard to quantify. However, there's ways to do so. We'll make sure that people feel empowered to be able to say something inside. Somebody's not doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? They feel encouraged, empowered to be able to say something. And again, that comes from senior management down. We can do all the training in the world, but if people cut corners, it's going to fail. The system will fail somehow, some way. And it's completely unneeded. Again, like I said, one life lost, we're trying to mitigate foodborne illness, period. It can be something as simple as, I said I cleaned that, but I didn't, right? So food safety culture kind of it kind of brings the whole thing together. What happens when we do shut down? Okay, well, we're still going to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And is it sort of, you talk about the role of management, is it also partly empowering people to kind of have an approach of like, if you see something, say something. In other words, like, don't
absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
Yes. If you see something, say something. I actually worked with a company recently who they had this red tag program on their lines. And I kind of loved it because what you see a lot in the industry is you've got operations and then you have food safety, right? And sometimes they like, hey, we can't do this. And they're like, no, we have numbers to punch out, right? They had a red tag system. So anytime anything was for whatever reason, if they flipped a red tag, they would stop the line. And there was no repercussions or anything. And it worked. Then they would log it and everything. People were using it. And I thought that was amazing. And it could be anything from somebody came in not following the correct GMPs, right? They're wearing jewelry, or something as large as something more detrimental, metal, or maybe somebody contaminated something with a chemical, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want people to feel like they can't, they can't rock the boat. I don't want to slow things down on it. Yeah.
And that happens a lot. And that's not just in food safety. That's in a lot of niches. A lot of places are favoritism and all that. You want to feel like you're able to speak up. And some people just naturally, their demeanor is they're more introverted and they don't want to. So if you can get a good system like that and really focus on that, I think that's an amazing way to at least start your food safety culture and know that you're going to be okay if you don't have inspections coming in. But like I said, we don't wait on inspections or audits to do the right thing, right? That's an everyday. That's what your food safety culture is.
Yeah, and it seems like it's something also, management would need to lead by example and show that, they're not going to just ignore stuff just to keep the ball rolling. They're going to want to.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody wants to be. I don't know. Nobody wants to feel like they're the only one who's doing something, or that they're.
No, people will get tired, and then you're going to lose good employees.
Absolutely. So, what about being able to show what you're doing in daily operations, like the importance of record keeping and making that a part of what you do on a daily basis? What does that entail?
Okay, so record keeping is going to let us know the when, how, who did something. Record keeping is very, very important. We want to make sure that we're backing up all of our records. We're keeping records as long as we need to. And in the event that there is a recall or something happens, we're able to pull those up. How I always explain to companies when I'm, explaining the importance of record keeping, fill everything out. Don't keep anything, don't leave anything empty, excuse me. And look at it like if you weren't there to explain it and people were looking at this document, they would know what happened. Right. So there's different ways. A lot of people are now going to digital record keeping. There's a lot more ways to do so now than there ever was before. And I'm seeing a lot of that conversion. And of course, with converting anything from, manual to it's going to be difficult. Record keeping is all a part of your traceability. Traceability, of course, is where did our stuff come from? A recall is pulling all your product back. Traceability is what goes into that product, right?
And so having these good traceability measures, I mean, how does it help you? Well, I can picture how it would help you respond to a recall. You're able to say, okay, let's go back in the supply chain and say, this happened there and that happened there, and I can maybe head it off. But how can it help you, keep from getting to that point?
Keep from getting to the point of a potential recall? Or I apologize. I just want to make sure that I understand what you're asking.
Seriously, keep an incident from happening, or reduce the, if you're able to trace
if you're able to trace to keep an incident from happening, it's a very good way. I'm going to answer this to the best of my ability. Okay. I'm going to jump on the traceability rule a little bit. Okay. This is requiring us to have, key elements from our suppliers, right? So that in itself, we're knowing where things are coming from. I think vetting your suppliers is super, super important. Having traceability kind of keeps us accountable, keeps sites accountable for knowing exactly where their items are coming from. And it makes us more conscious of it, I believe would be the answer to that. It's a little loaded. I apologize. Did I answer that correctly?
Yeah. So it's not just making sure that you have, on your own side, you're able to trace it's also all through your suppliers list, knowing that you can also trust them.
Absolutely. It also kind of lets us know, maybe let's say, for example, let's look at, there was a recall this year, unfortunately in cinnamon, not mentioning any companies or anything, but we had, they were getting their cinnamon. This company was getting their cinnamon from a cinnamon company, but we didn't know where that was coming from potentially, right? If you have a good traceability program, that company is getting their cinnamon from another country, right? Foreign supplier verification. And you have a lot more options to be able to look into it, make the right decisions for your product, for your brand safety, for your food safety, right? So I think that would be another key element in traceability, being able to assist in preventing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it just plays back to everything with recalls. It seems like it's quite clear that if you can, it's easier beforehand than to respond. And it goes with so many things in life. What about FSMA 204D? I've always there's a lot of uncertainty in people in the industry about how they're going to implement this, when they need to, what will it entail? Could you give a sort of like an overview of that?
Yeah, completely. So our upcoming traceability rule, January of 2026, it'll be in full effect. That gives us all plenty. I mean, we should all, if you're in the industry and we are producing food, we are processing food, we should already have good traceability measures. However, it's kind of a challenge. I'm only speaking from what I see. I mean, there's a very large industry. However, some of these companies are struggling a bit. A lot of the ones I work with too, they struggle a bit on full traceability. You've got to think, items, certain ingredients, think flour or wheat, or, keeping those exactly where they're at. Not that that's, so the traceability rule is going to be on certain products, right? I was just kind of going off on the whole traceability portion in itself. This is going to require companies that are in the rule and need to trace their stuff, to respond to the FDA if they require any documents within 24 hours. I think we have ample amount of time. I think it's kind of you have to have a good traceability system, and you have to test your traceability system, right? If you're testing it and we're not finding out where anything's coming from, then we need to, something needs to change. It's a gap, right?
Yeah.
I think that this new traceability rule will absolutely aid. Again, kind of goes back to holding companies responsible, accountable, and making them kind of think not that there's even any malicious intent, right, of where they're getting their ingredients, but you might find that somewhere you're getting something is actually not being tested or a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that this new traceability rule is going to help us recall a lot faster before anybody or more people get ill or sick.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's going to be a good, definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
I think worth remembering that a year can go by pretty quick.
This one has been the one for me.
I mean, yeah, or it can be extremely long. But I mean, it's the type of thing you would say, oh, we've got a year, we got 13 months. Next thing you know, oh, we got 6 months. Next thing you know, that's it. But so, yeah, definitely we do have some time, but people should definitely want to get the ball rolling on that. When we look at these recalls and the different reasons for them over the last, not just this year, but over the last decade or 2 decades, they break down for all different types of reasons. And if I remember the last statistic right, allergen-related ones, if not the leading one of the leading ones by a large degree. And within those, labeling is really important. I think the main reason for allergen was they didn't state what was in there, or they didn't fully. How important is labeling? Just
labeling is super important. Again, going back to allergens, I mean, it might not bother. It's kind of like foodborne illness in a sense, right? If somebody hasn't experienced it, or they don't have a family member who's experienced serious consequences of it, it's not always on the forefront of your mind, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with allergens. There could be somebody who is fatally allergic to peanuts. We were talking about plain peanuts earlier, right? Yeah. Just to recap on that, we were talking about plains and how they used to hand out honey roasted peanuts, and they were good. And now it's we've got to watch out for allergens. Just school kids, lunches. Labeling is extremely important because it gives consumers the option to make a decision.
Yeah, and it's with allergies. I remember we had Betsy Craig on here on a webinar talking about allergens. She was saying it oftentimes awareness is just with some companies, often just somebody who's in the front office has a family member, or has a child, has a relative, and it's just a lot of times until people kind of feel it on a personal level, they're not as aware, but it's like that's not going to be an out. You just got to be aware of it. And is this something that, in terms of labeling, what type of controls can people put in to make sure that they got everything on there? Is that
yeah, absolutely. Well, you want to know what you have, right? First and foremost, know exactly what raw materials are going into your product. You also have guidelines. Look at the USDA, look at the FDA. There's guidelines in labeling. Another thing you can do is there's tons of resources out there. That is one good thing about, there's lots of good things about technology and the media, right? But one of the best things is information source. We've got information at our fingertips. Now, of course, you want to be careful where you get it, but that's where, maybe a good CB or a good food company, or like I said, guidance from the FDA will help you with labeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the bottom line is make sure to put labeling front and center because, just even like we were talking a little bit earlier about, there was this recall that affected butter, and it had to do with they didn't label that there was dairy, and easy to get a laugh out of that, but at the same time, if it just reinforces to people to always label, always mention, always put everything there, even if you think it's obvious, even if it's like, butter's gonna have milk, it's gonna have dairy.
Absolutely. I apologize. Yeah, we talked about like the plant-based stuff and all the new stuff that's coming out too. So you got to think how many times, I recently had somebody that came, they got a chorizo, like the sausage, and it was plant-based and they didn't notice because it was real small, but it was on there, right? So they were able to realize later. But you always wanted to label things because you want to know what are we consuming, right? Which is a huge thing. Yeah. In general, all encompassing allergens, product.
And just never assume that it's that it goes without saying, or that it doesn't need to be said or need to be labeled. Just assume that it does.
And I would like to just make one, there are ways that we are supposed to label. FDA has good guidance on that. I would recommend to sites to look that up, because that is something that I see sometimes in consulting and whatnot, is it's not on there properly. So just make sure that if we're denoting that we have an allergen, we're doing it the correct way.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked, I think, for a minute there about the importance of self-auditing. So that you're prepared when the actual auditors come, but also just to have better safety with your products in your workplace. What does it take to self-audit yourself? You want to put in a self-auditing program,
right? Yeah.
What does that entail?
So for one, I would say that you want to find out what your what are you wanting to do, right? Are you wanting to do some type of standard? Are we wanting to do GMP? Do we want to do GFSI, right? Benchmark yourself to that standard. What are we doing? What gaps do we have that are not meeting that standards criteria? I think that would be a good way to at least start. And that's another opportunity for you to reach out to your resources, right? Find yourself a good CP.
Yeah. What about those? You mentioned the importance of the certification bodies. How can they help you, meet all these standards and get where you need to be?
Yeah, so a good certification body is going to be able to kind of walk you through, right? Some of them are all encompassing from farm to fork. A good certification body is going to let you know within your niche, within your industry, what type of certification. Maybe you have an idea what type of certification you want to get. However, you're on the fence, right? A good CB is going to walk you through that. And then they're also going to help you with the certification process. They're going to walk you along the way, let you know how you can get from here to there, how you can prepare for it, send you templates. There's a lot of different ways. Like I said, the resources are there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the resources is there, and you don't have to do it alone.
No, you're not alone. No, like I said, there's people like all of us that are behind the scenes all the time working on food safety stuff, and we keep up with all of the most current standards. And
well, definitely like ASI. I mean, I'll go ahead and say, yeah, you guys can lead through all these, because it can be hard to make sense of all these standards. Certainly, even people who are in the industry have been for some time. So
we have sites should never, sometimes people are afraid to ask questions, or they're afraid to not know an answer to something, right? And we all have that a little bit, but a good CB is, you shouldn't be condemned in any way, shape, or form. We want to help. We want to build you up. We want to make sure that you're accomplishing your goal, which helps us accomplish our goal, which is to keep the supply chain safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, I don't know if you wanted to mention someone about Global Food Safety Initiative, GFSI audits. How can those help just keep things safer and prevent a recall?
So the GFSI the Global Food Safety Initiative is the umbrella, and it encompasses our SQF, our BRC, a lot of our other GFSI standards. Now, this kind of keeps everybody doing the same thing. We've got industry experts that set up these different standards. A lot of retailers and grocers are requiring GFSI, and I'm not taking away from any of the other standards that we have going on within our company, but GFSI is the top. That's the reason it's a little bit harder to attain, but it ensures that you're showing in your brand that you're taking all the steps to be as compliant and safe as we could potentially be for the consumers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and that's what it's all about. So we offer a HACCP course, here too, actually a basic and an advanced one here at Rootwurks, and that's not why I'm asking it, but it is relevant. How would those guidelines help, implementing them in the workplace, helping you prevent a recall or prevent?
Yeah, so I think that certifications, your HACCP courses, HACCP is 101. We need to learn our HACCP, right? HACCP, PCQI, any type of courses that you're able to do, that again goes with the resources, right? Training, that goes back to training as well. Educate yourself on your industry. HACCP would allow for, you to just get a little more equipped. And I'm not sure, not to I don't know what type of HACCP course you have, but some of them are tailored to certain industries. Did I answer that to your?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, these guidelines and these certifications there for a reason, and
Right.
because they work and they help people, and obviously in places where they're required, you have to do them, but even in places where they aren't, there's going above and beyond can only, I think, work out in your favor. So.
I do want to make just one comment. We don't have, some HACCP certifications will have an expiration date on it. There's not necessarily an expiration date on HACCP. However, the industry changes all the time. We want to keep up current. It does not hurt. It doesn't hurt yourself for your own knowledge, for the sites, right? Or for the people around you. Update it every now and then. Do a new HACCP refresher. Find out what's going on, right? Because it's hard, especially if you're in the minutia, if you're every day working at your site and doing your own FSQA quality control for your division. It's kind of hard to keep up with the stuff that we're keeping up with, right? So I always say, take a refresher course.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things we talk about a lot, is just to kind of always be learning and always be in a, just a cycle of continuous improvement and learning. Obviously, things change, some things inspire, but just in general, to keep things fresh and to stay knowledgeable.
Completely, yeah, because we forget, especially if we're not using that. We redo our HACCP plan annually, right? Review it annually, or if something changes. And you can forget that after. It's easy to forget if you're not using it all the time, right? We understand a lot of this stuff because we do this all the time. So right. I encourage.
Yeah. Anybody went to college. If you're not using it, how much of that do you remember?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, I would be remiss if I not say our HACCP courses here at our HACCP courses is a really good refresher and way to keep all of those things, even if you already done it before previously, to keep those guidelines and those principles fresh, and just improve safety and help prevent some of these really unfortunate things that are happening. So I guess before we get out of here, if you were to come in, ASI, you're brought into some company, you're at a site, and they're like, okay, what are our first steps we can take because we want to prevent a recall? What's the most important? And you were sort of, I guess, to kind of draw out some initial steps.
That's a very good question. All right, so I walk onto a site, they don't have anything implemented, right? I'm always going to aim towards educating yourself. So now if we're there, we're ASI and we want to train, we want to help. For one, we're going to go with what industry are you in? And we have to figure out what type of programs do we want to put in place? What are we trying to keep a recall from happening? There's quite a few different components in there. There's different systems. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at what they have. I'm going to want to listen to, what are their customers asking for, because that is a bit relevant, right? As well as what do we already have implemented? What do we have implemented for, do we have any systems, right? Where are we getting our stuff from? I think that's a huge one. Are we getting them overseas, foreign supplier? I mentioned that before. I hope that am I on the right track with your question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So I want to know what is the client looking for first, right? Do they have anything implemented already? Do they have an idea of where they want to go? Training is paramount. Like I said before, it's kind of goes hand in hand with the food safety culture. I think that we need to know what are they producing and what are their systems, and then we can get in there and kind of give them more information. One thing I do love about us in ASI, and yes, I'm partial a little bit, but we have a lot of different people in different departments here that have expertise in different areas. So if we're not able, one person isn't able to get to something from farm to fork, like a one-stop shop, we're able to come in and kind of have somebody else help us in our area. So I wanted to say that as well.
No, absolutely. It's important to remember, it just, for companies, you don't have to be an expert. You can bring in experts. You can make use of their expertise.
That's exactly what I'm saying. When it's okay to not know things, it's okay not to understand, but that's why we're all here to work together to try to keep this stuff going
Yeah.
and hit our ultimate goal, which is to keep food safe.
Yeah, keep food safe, and also just to prevent the recalls, because even if nobody actually gets hurt, it can, if there's a recall because you didn't meet these certain guidelines, it can be really can do real damage to a company.
Expensive. Yeah, monetarily to your brand, right? That's a huge one. There might not even be your name goes out there. You're a big brand. Your name goes out there. It takes so much to recover from that. And I mean, ultimately, like I said, not taking away from the actual food safety or foodborne illnesses. We do want to protect our brand. That's another thing that is behind this as well, is making sure, it's consumer safety, but it's also brand safety.
Yeah, absolutely. And reputation is something that, like they say, it can take years to build, and then it can be gone in a moment. So
that's absolutely right.
Well, this has been great, Andrea. I guess if anybody is tuned in today and they'd like to learn more about ASI, and Andrea, go ahead and check out their website. If you're looking for a certification body, if you're looking for that expertise and that help to prevent prevent a recall, prevent things, and take a proactive approach, definitely check out what they're doing. That would be in your best interest, and we'd recommend that. Also, in terms of Rootwurks, you can see all of our different training courses, and also things like our HACCP course to help you instill what we talked about today, this culture of safety, and help meet these safety guidelines so you can prevent a recall and keep food safety front and center. And also the Rootwurks learning experience platform, our platform for education and safety training, which can also help create that sort of proactive approach and culture of safety, which is so key to so much of what we're talking about. And other than that, just thanks so much for being here, Andrea. And
thank you so much for having me, Ben.
Definitely. And to everybody who tuned in, good luck, and let's stay tuned.
Thank you.
Thank you.